Get ready to learn how to make these fluffy, pull-apart, Southern-style biscuits using only 2 ingredients. Yes, you heard me right, 2 ingredients. But first, if you haven't already, please consider going down below and clicking the subscribe button. It's so helpful. Now, this is all you need: self-rising flour and heavy whipping cream, and that's it. But before we begin, one tip is when you're making biscuits, you want them to be fluffy. So you've got to be careful that when you are measuring the flour, that you don't just stick your measuring cup in and just scoop, because then you're going to get too much flour and it's going to be really compacted. So I take a whisk and I just kind of sift it around in the flour to kind of loosen it up and fluff it up a little, and then take a spoon and scoop it into the measuring cup. And that way you don't get compacted flour and you're not over measuring the flour for your recipe. Now, this recipe calls for 2 cups of self-rising flour. Now, since you've fluffed up the flour with the whisk, this step really isn't necessary, but I like to do it as an extra insurance that the flour is fluffy and light and not, again, compacted. Now, here is a second method of sifting it with just a strainer. Either works. Next, you want to adequately flour the surface that you're going to roll your dough out on. And so I just kind of sift a light layer onto, this is a non-stick dough mat, but you can just use your counter, a cutting board, whatever you have is fine. And notice I put a big chunk of flour in the top right corner, and that's going to be to flour my cookie cutter that I'm going to use in a minute. Now, add the heavy whipping cream, 1 3/4 cups. And if you notice, I'm using this handy dandy dough mixer. And again, this is also not a required tool. You can use your hands, you can use a wooden spoon. It's totally adjustable. The only thing you want to be careful is that you're not mixing it really aggressively and squeezing the dough, because again, we've sifted and we've tried to keep it light and fluffy, and if you over mix the dough, it will be kind of tough and it won't fluff up as nicely. And so now you're going to just dump it out. Notice I didn't over mix it. I just mixed it till it was kind of coming together, and then just kind of lightly kind of work your dough so it's kind of together. And I just press it down till it's about 3/4 of an inch thick on the dough mat. Just lightly pressing. Again, you don't want to push it and compact it very tough and hard onto your mat. Just work it very lightly and you should be good to go. And now I just take my cookie cutter, dust it in flour, and cut my pieces of dough and put them straight onto the cookie sheet. This is a clay stone that I like to use, but again, you can just use a pan or a cookie sheet, whatever you have, as long as it's greased and non-stick. And then just keep dusting your cookie cutter and just making your cuts as close together as possible. And hey, if it's not a perfect circle, that's fine. If you notice, some of these are a little bit misshapen, but it's good to get as many of the original rolling out as possible. And then you just take the dough and lightly work it back together. Again, don't push it very hard. Don't overwork it. Don't like knead it or anything like that. You're not making bread. You're making biscuits. And notice I can get 2 more out of this. This last one, I'm just going to mold it into the top of my cookie cutter just to kind of make it a similar size. And there you have it. You made 2, 4, 6, 8 beautifully wonderful sized biscuits. And now you're going to cook them in the oven at 500 degrees for about 10-12 minutes max. You just want to keep an eye on them and make sure they don't overcook, and you're good to go. See how they fluffed up and they have these wonderful layers, and it's just yum. Sincerely, Dawn.